worksheet 8. So we're going to do some more graphing. More graphing today, but we're going to have phase shifts. I know this is not anybody's favorite. Mine either. Couple things. You are to label 5 ordered pairs in one period. Okay? That means if it
Yay!
It's coming, guys. It's on here, so Faisal can see it. You guys are just behind, that's all. You have to label 5 ordered pairs in one period, okay? If it's a sine graph, you can't tell me it goes through 0, 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi, okay? If it's a normal sine graph, you can't just tell me it finishes every 2 pi and your 5 ordered pairs look like that. You have to tell me 5 ordered pairs that are all in one period. So you have to take the period and you're going to divide it by 4 to figure out what to count by in your increments. Okay, and we'll practice that today. That's how to find your ordered pairs. Now, if it is got a phase shift, you're going to have to take that and add it to the phase shift. Okay, plus 1/4 of a period to find the ordered pairs. What else was I going to do before we actually start? Just review this for me. A sine B x minus C plus D. In this form, when it's factored and the B is factored out, A represents what? Amplitude. B affects the period, but it's 2 pi over B as long as it's sine or cosine. C tells you exactly the phase shift as long as it's factored form. And D tells you the vertical shift. Anything added or subtracted back here. We okay? All right, so I'm going to go around the room a little bit. Trey, tell me something, anything about this graph. Okay. Alex, anything? Okay, this -1 on the back is telling us the vertical shift is down 1. Cassie? Okay, so the B value right here is 3, so the period is 2 pi over 3. Now, if I take that period and divide it by 4, what will I get? I'll get 2 pi over 12 or pi over 6. That's what we're going to have to count by to get in our ordered pairs. We're going to count 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6. What is 2 pi over 6 though? 3 pi over 6, which will reduce to pi over 2, 4 pi over 6, 2 pi over 3. If we kept going, we'd have 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, or pi. But this actually finishes a cycle by what? 2 pi over 3. All right, where are the maximums and minimums for this graph? I'm going to erase my little scritchy scratches down here because this whole shift thing has been shifted down 1. So the midline is down here at y equals -1. And then it goes above and below that how much? So the maximums are all at +1. The minimums are all down here at -3. Everybody okay? Now sometimes I draw the graph before I label anything because I really don't want to mess with getting it to fit, but we'll assume we can manage this time. This is a sine shape, so it starts at the midline, which is normally at 0, 0, but it's been shifted down 1. Then it doesn't isn't an upside down one or anything, so we just go up to the max, back to the midline, down to the min, back to the midline, and we should finish by 2 pi over 3. Is that working out for us? Okay. It's a quarter circle stretched, a quarter circle stretched, a quarter circle stretched, and a quarter circle stretched, and mine looks horrible, but... Do you need me to write out the ordered pairs, or you can tell from the graph? We okay? Just be careful you don't label like pi over 3, 0, right? It's pi over 3, negative 1. All right, the domain, even though we only drew a little piece of this, it would continue, yes? I have a couple more ordered pairs here. We could keep, or a couple more points on my graph. We could keep going, all right? By the way, I'm going to forget to tell you this later. The bookwork says you have to do 2 periods. I'm okay if you just do 1 period, okay? When I ask you on the homework check, I will check that you have the 5 ordered pairs, not that you have 10. All right, the range, what are the max and min on this one? Negative 3 to 1, and it is inclusive, so you need the heart brackets. Everybody okay? All right, that one didn't have a phase shift. Before we go any further, will you change this to a C on your paper? I have a typo. Okay, when you factor it, the C here tells you the phase shift. If the B is in the parentheses, then the phase shift has to be C divided by B, or you have to factor it, whichever way you want to think of it. Some of you struggled with that. I know there was only like one problem that had that on the homework, but it was like the last one on the homework check. If you missed the very last blank on the homework check, it's probably because you didn't divide that. All right, factored or unfactored form on this one, example 1. There is a parenthesis here, so it is factored. Now, this is a weird one. B is pi, so what does that make the period? Thank you. All right, so the period is just plain old 2. Gannon, can you tell me something else about this graph? Yeah. Hey, amplitude is 3. Ben, something else? Right, there is no vertical shift. Sam? Right 1/2. No pi there, right? But are we okay with that? Because the period is plain old 2 as well. So it's going to shift to the right 1/2, and then it's going to, is it going to finish by 2? That's what students think the period means. That's where it finishes. The period is the entire length. It's got to take a length of 2. So if we shifted it to the right 1/2, it's now going to finish by 2 1/2. Everybody okay with that? All right. And it is a cosine, so you don't have to put anything here if you don't want, but it's going to go maximum to maximum. Can anybody tell me the domain and range right now? Yeah, there's no vertical shift up or down, so the amplitude is just going to go tell us that it goes from positive 3 to negative 3. All right, you want to draw it first this time? I just like to offer a variety of ways you can approach these. No? You want to label them first? Okay, we'll label them first. We're going to start where? It's going to shift to the right 1/2. Then the rule is you take the period and you divide it by 4. What is that going to become? 1/2. So it's going to count by 1/2. 1/2, 2 halves, or 1, 3 halves, and I don't care if you write 1 1/2 or 1.5, 4 halves, or 2. Am I done? Does it finish by 2? No, I got to go 2 1/2 or 5 halves. I could keep going, but it should have one cycle between 1/2 and 5/2. All right, where does it start? The first ordered pair we have is up here at 1/2, 3. Then at 1, it's at the midline, which is the 0 here, 1, 0. Then at 3/2, it's down to the minimum. At 2, it's back to the midline. And at 5/2, it's back to the maximum. How many of you are really happy when somehow we get to divide out the pie and we don't have to deal with that anymore? By the way, on Friday's quiz, as all of the examples we're doing, the answers need to be exact on your ordered pairs, okay? You can't type these in the calculator and give me crazy decimals like 2 pi over 3, Miss Hoffbauer, that's 2.173599412. No. Exact answers. We good? All right. Where did I leave off? In the back? Max, can you tell me anything about this? Anything at all? Yeah. A vertical shift up 1. Is that what you want to tell me? Good job. Seth, what about you? Yes, +2. Very good. Amplitude is always positive. Michaela will come up here. Can you tell me something? Yes, the B value is just 1, right? There's nothing here. I don't know if it's factored or not factored. There's just a 1 either place. So the period is just 2 pi. Good job. James, what you got? Anything? Phase shift? Okay, to the right, pi over 4. Can you describe the shape at all, Alex? What does that mean that it's a negative sign? Very good. So it's going to like start at the midline and go down first, right? You guys, if you don't want to draw the shape there or do anything about the shape, it's fine. I like to do it because it reminds me, because I get all caught up in other stuff, and then when I go to actually graph it, I've forgotten what it was supposed to be, because I've gotten all caught up in labeling ordered pairs by then. Midline, anybody? Yep, up 1, so it's y equals 1. All right, so I'm going to draw my midline at y equals 1. How far above and below that am I going? Up 2 would put me at 3 for all my maximums. What's 2 below +1, guys? -1 for all my minimums, right? All right. We're going to start to the right, pi over 4. But then what are we going to add to that? We need to add 1/4 of the period, which is, yes, a pi over 2. So the phase shift to the right, pi over 4, and then we need to keep adding pi over 2's. You could do it on your calculator. You could type 1/4 plus 1/2, math, enter, enter. Or you could just get a common denominator. It was, before we even reduced it, it was 2/4, right? So 1/4 plus 2/4 means the next place we're going to have an actual ordered pair is going to be 3 pi over 4. Okay, I put the little mark in there because that would actually be a 1/4, right? If you want 1/4. Okay, the next ordered pair will be at, add 2 more 4ths, so 5/4. 7/4. How are we going to know when we're done? What's 2 pi past 1/4? Past. Because it's got to finish. It shifted to the right a 1/4, and now it's got to finish in 2 pi. So 9/4. Yes. 2 And 1/4 pi would be 9/4 pi. So we got to keep going a little bit here. All right. Can anybody tell me what these would be in between if I wanted to label them? What would fall in between 1/4 and 3/4? 2/4, which is pi over 2. Between 3/4 and 5/4 would be, 4/4 or pi. 3 pi over 2, which I didn't write correctly. 1.5, right? Between 7 and 9 would be 8/4 or 2 pi. All right, but our ordered pairs are at the black ones here. All right. Where do we start again? The shape here, we're starting at the midline, over to the right though at pi over 4. And then it goes down at 3 pi over 4, back to the midline at 5 pi over 4, up at 7 pi over 4, and back to the midline at 9 pi over 4. All right. I will tell you that on Friday's quiz, I think, if I remember right, there's only one phase shift. There's actually, I think, 2 problems that have a phase shift, but one is like a match the graph to the equation. And there might be one where you have to write the equation that has a phase shift. But as far as you dividing it out and doing all that, I think you have to do one. I didn't put a phase shift on every problem just to be cruel, okay? There's like one. All right. Domain and range, anybody? And -1 to 3. Okay. If we continued this graph, I just want you to check this out. At negative pi over 4, it would have a maximum over here. So this could have been a cosine shifted to the left pi over 4, right? Do you see where the cosine piece of it fits in there, maximum to maximum? All right. Number 3. Philip, tell me something about this graph. Okay. He noticed right away that it's not factored, so to find the phase shift, we're gonna have to do pi over 4 divided by b, which is 2, which will become what, guys? Yes. Pi over 4 divided by 2 is pi over 4 times 1/2, which is pi over 8. So left or right pi over 8? Right pi over 8. So somewhere over here is going to be our pi over 8. We're going to shift to the right. Yeah, Jenna? If it had said 2x minus pi over 4 like that, the phase shift would have just been pi over 4. Okay? The 2 would still affect the period. It would be 2 pi over 2. Yep. So we're going to do the same thing here. Good job. Okay, so the only thing that changes by the 2 not being factored out is that the phase shift isn't really in its nicest form. We have to factor it out. All right. Jenna asked a question, so who have I don't remember who Joey, tell me something. Joe, tell me something. Oh, it's number 3 on your worksheet. Just tell me something about it. What's a vertical shift or something? There we go. Who else have I not picked on? Abigail? Amplitude, midline, what do you want to tell me? Yeah, there's nothing multiplied out in front here, so the amplitude is just 1. Samantha? You tell me something? Yeah, I don't care. Yep. The midline is going to be up at 3, right? I'm trying to help you out here. So the maxes and the mins are at what? Good job. It just goes 1 unit above and below that. So 2 to 4. Good job. And the shape of this is just like maximum to maximum, right? All right. Anybody know what we're going to count by, though? Or what we have to add on to our pi over 8? This is pi. The period is pi, so we have to divide it by 4. So Trey's absolutely right. We're going to add fourths onto that. Now, we're counting by eighths here, so 1/4 later, pi over 8 plus a pi over 4. Well, how do you do that? Make that a 2/8, and we end up at 3/8. The next one that we're going to have an ordered pair is another 2/8 later, which would be, okay, another 2 pi later would be, or 2/8 later would be 7/8. Are we done? How long does this have to go?
One more.
It's got to go, well, 4 more, right? Because that's why we divided by 4. But it's also has to go past pi 1/8. What's 1 and 1/8? 9/8. So in between here, if we labeled this, this would, I don't know what that would have been, obviously, because I can't. This would have been 8/8 or pi. This would have been 6/8 or 3/4. You don't have to have these. This would have been 4/8 or 1/2. This would have been 2/8 or 1/4. Okay. All right. How do I put my dots in? Pi over 8 is the max, right? 3 pi over 8 is the midline. 5 pi over 8 is the minimum. 7 pi over 8 back to the midline. 9 pi over 8 maximum. Ooh, that might be my best attempt to match the dots all day. Do we have one more of these to do? All right, let's see if we can go quickly. Anybody? Amplitude?
3.
B?
1/2.
Period. 2 pi divided by 1/2 is 4 pi. Phase shift. It's not pi. It's not factored. If we were to factor it out, we'd have to divide pi by 1/2, which would be, okay, it's pi divided by 1/2, or 2 pi. Which way, though? Left. 2 pi. Vertical shift, anybody? Down 1, and it is a plane sine graph, so it starts at the midline, goes up, and then so on. Where is the midline at? Y equals -1. Where are the maximums at? 3 units above that, which would be +2. I'm not doing a very good job here because we want to shift this to the left, don't we? So I'm going to write these over a little further. The maximums are at 2, and the minimums, anybody? 3 below -1 would be -4. All right. I was kind. I didn't make this one too tricky. If you take the period and you divide it by 4, what happens? we get to count by pi. So if we shift to the left, 2 pi, we're at negative 2 pi. If I could write. If we add a pi onto that, we're at what? Negative 1 pi. We add a pi onto that, we're at 0. After that, we're at pi, 2 pi. How far do I have to go? Yeah, at 4 pi it would have done another part of a period, right? You can keep going, but you don't have to. It takes 4 pi to finish, but it went to the left too. So it's going to start at negative 2 pi. That's what that's supposed to say. I don't know. That's a mess. And finish by 2 pi. All right, sine, so it starts at the mid, goes up, back to that. Ooh, what's wrong? That's not the midline. Just kidding. This is a negative 2 pi. Okay, here's the midline. Then it goes to the maximum, then to the midline, minimum, midline. If you want to keep going, you can. Wow, I'm having a good day with this thing. Mark this one down. Just be careful, guys, because I always have students who, when they go back, now they write negative 2 pi 0. Make sure you know it's at negative 1, right? And it doesn't cross through 0, 0, even though mine almost looks like it is. It crosses through 0, negative 1. And over here, 2 pi negative 1. And so on. Are we okay? All right. Everybody needs a graphing calculator because we're going to use our calculator to come up with a sine regression equation. Everybody got one? Okay, it says this table shows the average monthly temperatures for Ann Arbor, Michigan in degrees Fahrenheit. Write a sinusoidal function, okay? The word sinusoidal, refers to some kind of a wave-like shape, okay? It doesn't mean you have to write it in terms of sine. You could write an equation in terms of cosine, and it would still be sinusoidal. The graphing calculator does sine regression, okay? But when we write equations tomorrow, if it's easier to do a cosine so that we don't have to do a phase shift, we're going to, okay? Sinusoidal just means in terms of either sine or cosine. It means some function that has a wave shape. All right. Says to use x equals 1 to represent January. So we're going to put in 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 12. And we're going to put this in list 1 and this in list 2. Remember how to do this? Stat, enter. Into list 1, you want the numbers 1 through 12. Guys, please do this. If you don't physically do it a couple times, you're not going to remember how to do it on the test or quiz. List 2 should have those temperatures. I did that one wrong, didn't I? All right, we all know I'm the slowest person in the room, so I'm sure you're all done by now. We need to turn on the stat plot so we can look at these. Before you do that, or after you do that, doesn't really matter, but at some point, I think it matters what mode we're in. I think we need to be in radians, okay, because we do our equations for sine and cosine in radians. Make sure you're in radian mode. Mode is right up at the top here next to the blue button. Make sure the third one down says radians. If it's darkened on degree, go over to radians and hit enter a few dozen times till it's darkened, you know. Then go second y equals. To turn your stat plot on, make sure it's on the first little type here, the scatter plot, and it says list 1 and list 2. Then do you remember how to get the right window? Yep, zoom 9 is the zoom stat. And I'm getting some other garbage because I forgot to clean out my y equals. All right. Graph should look like this. Does that look like a sinusoidal shape to you? Yes. Could I make a parabola work? Probably. But they told us it's to do a sinusoidal function, okay? Right here you can tell it kind of looks like it goes up and it might be going to repeat. But all right. So we go stat. Where are the regression equations? Over to the right to calculate. It's down there quite a ways. It's at C, I believe. It says sine reg. Okay. We do want to store this. Now, if you have an older calculator, this is where you still do the same thing you always have in the past. Parenthesis L1, comma, L2, comma, Y1 to store it. Does that sound familiar to everybody? On the newer one, like I have here, just use the default of 3 iterations, because I was going to look up what that means and I don't know. Okay, list 1 and list 2 it should say. Don't assign a period, it'll do it itself. Only thing you want to fill in on this screen is the regression where you want it to store it. Remember, Y1 is under the vars key next to clear, arrow to the right, enter, 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 and then enter to calculate. Now, it says y equals a times sine bx plus c, where b is in the parenthesis, plus d. So I'm going to round these a little bit. 29.06 sine 0.48 x minus 1.78 plus 55.83. All right. It's really nice that we stored this, but does this question even ask us to predict a value? It doesn't. So the only thing storing it did is now if we look at the graph, it should be hitting all those points, right? Or close. There should be as many above as below if it's not hitting them all. Okay? Does it look like a pretty good regression, pretty good fit? We could use the equation to predict, for example, next June's temperature, which it's really not a very good predictor. What month would next June be, guys? 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. If we go out to 18, either on the table or by typing it in 18, yeah, we get like 70 degrees. Is that what it was last June? No, it's like a full 10 degrees off, so I don't really know that it was a good equation, but that's what we're going with. Yeah, 69 point something, yeah. All right, let's try this. We all okay? Those are the screens you should have used along the way. Here, one more time. This one doesn't give us a full 12 months. They're going to ask us to predict a value for October, which will be month 10. So we only want to put in list 1 the numbers 1 through what? August is 8, right? 1 through 8. And then Y2 will be the visitors. Please notice the label. What is our Y value? Visitors in thousands. So when we go to do part B, we got to remember that. All right. I'm going to go stat, enter. Maybe I am. I don't know what's going on. I only need through 8. is 2. I might as well retype because... Okay, what was January, guys? It's underneath my little thing here. Okay, so 10, enter, 8, enter. Am I doing that right? If you want to look at your graph, you probably want to clear out your old equation that you had in y equals, and then do a new zoom 9. Does that look pretty sinusoidal? Okay. So now if we want to find that regression equation, we do what? Stat, right arrow down to C or sine regression, and then I'm going to enter through all that down to the store regression equation. Do you remember what a shortcut is if you have the new operating system? Alpha trace will give you the Y1 in 2 easy buttons instead of 6 or whatever it is. All right. You do want to write it down probably before you do anything else. I got 12 sine 0.6. Does that say 3.8? So I'll go to 6.4x minus 2.86 plus 19.84. Anybody else get that, or did I type something wrong? We okay? All right. If I have stored it and I look at the graph, oh, look. It's beautiful. All right, if I want to predict October, I can go look at the table and just scroll down to month 10, or mine is in ask mode, so I would have to type in a 10. And I got 15.4 roughly if I round to 1 decimal, 15.37. But it's thousands of visitors. Or we could write 15,372 visitors if we wanted to go that many places. All right. What happens if you didn't store it? We had this discussion last period. If you on the home screen you typed 12 sine 0.64 times 10 minus 2.86 plus 19.48, 84, thank you. We get 15.2 roughly, so at least it's in the ballpark, but you'll get a slightly different answer if you didn't store it. Use all the decimal places. Are we all right? Okay, this is your assignment. The problems, it's kind of confusing how that's written. It should say really 14 through 20 all and 22. All right, whatever. You're assigned 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 22. That's it.
That's a lot.
Because these are, I think, regression equation things.
Why don't we just do 14 through 22?
Because 21 was kind of weird, so I skipped it. And these, I think you have 6 graphs to do. It does say 2 periods, but you can just do 1, okay? Get started. You got 6 or 7 minutes.